Welcome to the Lowdown on Ghana Web TV. This program brings to you the hard truth, the facts, and the fears. My name is Ismail Akwei. 23rd August 2021 marks 230 years since the beginning of the uprising in Santo Domingo, today Haiti and the Dominican Republic. This played a crucial role in the abolition of the transatlantic slave trade. To mark this day, the world commemorates the International Day for the Remembrance of the Atlantic Slave Trade and its abolition. Our question is, what is the depth of enlightenment of African Americans on slave trade and their connection to the continent? We would have this discussion with our guest, who is the founder and president of a Washington, D.C. based African cultural edutainment, resource and consulting group. This is the Lowdown. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the Lowdown. My name is Ismail Akwei. Our guest is the CEO and founder of the Adinkra Group, Diallo Sumbry. Welcome to the Lowdown.
Thank you so much for having me in your new studio.
Thanks a lot.
Greatly appreciate it. Good to see you again, too.
Yeah, good to see you again. The last time we spoke, you were the first African American to be Ghana's tourism ambassador.
Yes,
so
sir.
are you still in that role, or is over now?
I'm still in the role. As far as I know, I'm still in the role. I still have a very healthy relationship with the Minister of Tourism, with Ghana Tourism Authority, with the Beyond the Return Committee. So it's going well. I mean, naturally, like everyone else, COVID has taken precedence, but I think we're all working steadily to make sure that Ghana's tourism industry stays afloat.
Yeah, talking about COVID, I know it's affected the tourism industry, and the Adinkra Group is deep in that space. So how bad is it for your company?
Well, so a part of what we do is tourism. So I wouldn't necessarily answer the question with how bad it is. I would say that along with everyone else who works in tourism, especially heritage tourism, bringing people to West African countries, everybody suffered to an extent because of international policies around flights, COVID vaccinations, COVID tests. The expense of the COVID test has made it difficult for some people to travel. People are concerned about their health. So we're really more or less focused on helping people be safe, following the trends, and doing our research to make sure that when people do come, we can provide a safe trip for them here and a safe passage home.
Well, we'll soon talk about the Adinkra Group, but now let's talk about the International Day for the commemoration of slave trade and its abolition. And slave trade is a very important subject when it comes to even Ghana, when it comes to even the world, because black people, a lot of us were taken outside the continent to other places. And I think you have roots in that line because you are African American, and I think every African American basically has roots in Africa. How are Americans right now, I mean black Americans, how are they reconciling with the fact that slave trade did happen and also trying to connect to their roots? I know this is a very broad question.
It is. What I would say is I wouldn't look at it in a vacuum. So I wouldn't necessarily look at now as an extremely special time when you look at the history of African people in America. So one, I think it's important to say that we all know that Africa is the cradle of civilization. So depending upon how deep we want to go with science and how far we want to go back, I would say that every human being has African ancestry, right? So one, the world has to kind of accept that and then figure it out. Two, a lot of people are familiar with the transatlantic slave trade, right? A lot of people are familiar with what happened. There are things that are still being discovered. So it's not a new thing. I think it's important to commemorate it. I think it's important to have conversations about it without necessarily indicting every other race, so to speak. And I think it's important for us to accept it, right? Figure out how to move beyond it and focus more on how we level up and move into the future more so than what happened, right? Because if we spend our whole time talking about what happened, we know that there's a gap of time we won't ever be able to recover, right? We know that there's been an identity loss for those of us who are in America or the Caribbean or other parts, right? So I'm more or less focused on solutions.
Okay.
Right? So one way that I'm working towards helping people recover that identity loss is I work with a company called AfricanAncestry.com. AfricanAncestry.com is the only DNA tracing company that allows people of African descent to trace their DNA back to modern day country and ethnic group. That helps to recover the gap. But more than anything else, it's just really about empowering people with their history, with their culture, to be able to move forward. And people do that in different ways.
Yeah, so talking about the present right now, we've had the Black Lives Matter protests and also racism, which is really key and going on everywhere. Is there any connection with the African struggle? Because currently in Africa, there's also its own issues and the struggle. Is it an issue of black and white, or is it just an extension of what's happening here that's going on there?
I think it's an extension, and I think that the best way to look at it, no matter where you are in the world, is a continuum. And if we are able to look just at the past 100 years, 150 years, we can see some alignment specifically with the history of Africans in America and with the African continent, right? So one of the reasons why Ghana is such an exciting and appropriate place for this new emerging black renaissance where people want to come back home is because of Ghana's relationship with black America, so to speak. Ghana's first president, Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, spent a lot of time in America. Yeah. And it didn't necessarily, the time he spent there didn't necessarily provide a full foundation for his thoughts on Pan-Africanism, but it increased his capacity. He went to an historically black college and university, Lincoln University. He spent a lot of time, what we call on the streets of Harlem, listening to orators. So when you look at history, you're going to see an alignment with the civil rights struggle of black people and the African independence movement. When you read history and research on Kwame Nkrumah, you're going to see how his involvement, his conversations with people like Malcolm X, with people like Martin Luther King, with people like Ralph Bunche, Abernathy, and a lot of those other civil rights leaders helped him develop some of his thoughts around democracy and Pan-Africanism. And you see it the other way around too. So it's really, I think, appropriate that Ghana is in this position right now. And I'm saying that to say that now let's go forward to Black Lives Matter. It's a different time and a different movement, but it hasn't stopped. It's just taken on a new position, a new transition. So in the first quarter of the 20th century, you had black people fighting for education, right? Wanting to be educated, wanting to have equal rights. Then we had things like Brown versus Board of Education, separate, not equal, right? Then we go to the 60s and 70s, we had civil rights. Now we're in 2020 and we're saying Black Lives Matter, right? But it's all somewhat of the same struggle. And at the same time, I think we can all accept the ridiculousness of having to fight for human rights, of having to demand to be treated like a human, right? And that's what we all want.
And now the struggle has been digitalized. It's online. We have all these movements online and everything like that. Is it the same for education? Are African Americans taught all these history that you know, which you've read from books? Is that the same thing going on out there?
Well, when you look at formal education and how most people are taught history and where most people get the basis of their information from, it's from public school. If you look at the public school system in the United States, if you look at the public school system in Europe, in Asia, in South America, in Africa, nobody teaches history from an African-centered perspective, or nobody teaches history from an African-empowered perspective. There is no curriculum in the world internationally recognized in any institution, most of them outside of some black history departments and some HBCUs and private institutions, that talk about Africa as a cradle of civilization, that address the stories of African antiquity. We have the ridiculousness of people saying that pyramids in Egypt were built by aliens, right? Nobody talks about the Mali Empire. Nobody talks about the Songhai Empire. Nobody talks about these great African civilizations and how math, science, geometry, and all of these things came out of a very ancient culture, right? So the same in America. Most people who are educated formally, they do not receive an education that talks about the history of African people beyond enslavement. So you start learning about your roots at slavery. You watch the movie Roots. You learn that in 1619, black people, you learn that you were slaves and then you got free, right? And I don't even like to say slaves. I'd rather say enslaved, right? But so that hasn't changed, and I don't think that's going to change. In fact, in my book, A Smart Ghana Repatriation Guide, in the education chapter, I talk about that. I talk about that. I think that all education has a fallacy in its foundation until it begins to recognize Africa as the cradle of civilization and starts from the beginning. Yeah. Right? And it's a fact. It's not my opinion. It's not, you can debate it all you want, but you're not debating me. You're debating time and history.
So with this issue of education, I know for yourself, I mean, your personal life, you had education with the help of your parents. So do you think it's a personal project for parents to teach their children, or they just have to leave it for the educational system to do it?
Well, I think that's a job for parents to decide how they want to raise their children. I'm an empowered parent. My children were raised with the understanding the schools that they attended knew that my children's parents were in charge of their education. And we partnered with the school system, right? Which is a different way of looking at it than putting the responsibility on the educational institution to educate your child. So I believe that parents are ultimately responsible, but I'm not here to indict parents, and I'm not here to indict people who haven't chosen to teach their children certain things. But I do think it is a personal choice, which many African Americans discover in college, right? Most African Americans you meet, that's why when they come to Ghana and they visit the slave castle, they say, we were lied to. I'm just finding out the truth about our history, about our people. And that's because they discovered it when they went to college, when they started reading books in their black history class and their black literature class. This is when they began to discover a lot of things about black history and African history that they might not have discovered previously. I'm an advocate for facts and honest truth. And if you're honest, then why should we start at 1600 or 1500 when the world and civilizations were thriving for thousands of years before? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. So we'll talk about the younger generation and how they're embracing the entire African Renaissance and also their interest in issues of history and their past. After this break, this is the Lowdown. Welcome back from the break. My name is Ismail Akwei. This is a Lowdown. Our guest, Diallo Sumbry, is still here. So, Diallo, we're talking about history, education,
yes,
and everything around black history. So, the younger generation, we have a lot of young people who get surprised when they get to Ghana and they see all the slave castles and everything else. Then it's like, we never knew this ever was there. We never knew this was the past. This was the history and all of that. Do we still have a lot of younger people interested in taking that journey back to the roots?
We do. One of the things that I think is different about this generation's, the younger generation's interest is I think the younger generation has an interest of finding out what went on, what happened, embracing it, and then moving forward. And sometimes it feels like the older generation finding out what happened and still sitting there and still resting in it and still pointing the finger, pointing the blame. You did this to us. These people did this to us. You helped them do this to us. And young people are like, okay, they're more or less, I think, embracing all of humanity. It's like, okay, this happened. Now, what do we do to move forward? Right now, how do we move forward? Which is what the next generation is supposed to do. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to do. When I look at my son, who's 24, his thought pattern and mindset is different than mine. You know what I'm saying? So I think they're doing what they're supposed to do, but I think that because of technology, because of the amount of available information, people are definitely looking at it a little bit differently. But the yearn to get information is still there from where I sit.
Yeah, and also you are also a stakeholder of tourism. And I know you try to get a lot of people to join your birthright journeys and all of that. How is that going? Are you really reaching the people? Do they get you?
You know what? That's actually a great question, because the point of what we do with Birthright Journeys is not for people to get me. It's for people to get themselves, right? We want to put you in a situation, and we put you in a place for you to be face to face with yourself, because it doesn't help you to get me. That's not going to help you accomplish your mission. That's not going to help you live in your purpose. The way that you live in your purpose is to get yourself. So are you ready to do that internal personal work, right? Where you come to grips with your own past, with your own history, with the history of your people, your family, then figure out what to do with that and how to use it to move forward. So I think in that sense, yes, it's working. I think that people who we've brought here, people who we've helped to curate a certain journey and experience, I think they've gotten that. And many people are beginning to see themselves differently. People have changed their names. Some people have moved. And then some people who never thought that they would visit the continent of Africa and step foot in the soil are also now bringing other people. You understand what I'm saying? So I think it is working. But it's a lifetime work, right? Because I'm not the first to do it, and I won't be the last, right? Marcus Garvey started doing it a long time ago, when he looked at trying to bring a whole bunch of black people or people of African descent to Africa. So I'm in that line of different people who felt like it was important to help people connect.
Yeah. So now let's bring it down to Ghana, where the stories are here, and the stories are in the landmarks, the stories amongst the people, the stories are in books. Mm-hmm. Is a setup, I mean, up to standard for people to be able to soak in all the history that's around the country?
Well, is the setup up to standard for people who visit?
Who visit, yes.
Yeah. I'm not sure if the setup is up to standard for people who live in Ghana, who are Ghanaian, to embrace and get the history and culture that's around them. Interestingly enough, I'm from DC, right? There are people in Southeast DC who've never been to Northwest DC. There are people in Northeast DC who've never been to Southwest DC. You get the point. Just like in Ghana, there are people who live in Cape Coast who've never been to Accra. There are people who live in Accra who've never been to Ada. So it's not just a Ghana thing when you start talking about access to information and education. I think that Ghana has done as good a job as it can with the tools that it has over the past few years in terms of making what history that is available to people who come. Can a better job be done? Yes, of course a better job can always be done. But I think there's also a magic in discovering, right? So there's a magic in discovering and going through whatever you have to go through to get the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, even if that pot of gold is a painful thing, right? By sitting in the male dungeon in Cape Coast or Elmina slave dungeon, or by walking through the door of no return and hearing the waves crash and imagining what your ancestors went through. So I think there's a value in all of that, but definitely more can be done to make it easier and to make it a more fulfilling experience. That's a part of the reason why I wrote the book, A Smart Ghana Repatriation Guide, and that's a part of the reason why my team and I are developing tools that we think can help people have that experience in a more seamless, easier, and fulfilling way.
We'll soon come to the book and the tools, but as an African American, what opportunities do you see in this whole tourism and beyond tourism for Ghanaians who are here? And because you could see it from a different perspective than those who are here, what opportunities have you seen so far?
I met a gentleman at a wedding. He walked up to me and he said, "Excuse me, are you Diallo?" And I said, "Yes." And he's like, "I've been wanting to meet you." And I'm like, "Nice to meet you." And he said, "I just wanted to meet you to say thank you." And I was like, "You're welcome. Like, thank you for what?" And he was like, "Well, I understand you help with the year of return." I said, "Yes." And he said, "Because of you, I'm able to feed my family in a different way than I was able to before. And I'm still able to feed my family based on the relationships that I've made with people who's traveled here for the year of return." That was so fulfilling for me. Like that, and that was the reason for my involvement. Like, now how do we quantify that, right? How do you put that into a data report, right? To show everybody the effect that it has. that's a different story. But it's happening now, right? The effect is happening and it's working for Ghanaians. Again, I know you said we're going to get to the book, but my team and I, we're working on a lot of things that I think will help make that question more apparent and will help be able to bring more opportunities to Ghanaians in a way where they receive the education that they need, they receive the training that they need to be able to compete and work in an international marketplace.
Yeah. So now let's move to some other issues. I've received personally complaints from people who want to return home. Some come in and they can't even do a year. Some 6 months and they're out. You know, they complain about so many things, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of them too. What are some of the complaints I've heard? I don't want to mention mine so that you would say the same thing.
You don't have to. I have my own.
Yeah. What are some of the complaints you've been receiving?
So I'm going to keep referring to my book because this is the reason why I wrote it.
Okay.
In my book, I talk about this. And in it, I say, if you're a complainer, as opposed to somebody who's bringing a solution, stay home. We don't want you here, right? I mean, that's a little harsh, right?
Yeah.
It's a little harsh, but it's not for everybody, and it's not America. Ghana's only 60 years old, right? Ghana's still dealing with its own personal effects from colonialism. Ghana's still dealing with how the various tribes and ethnic groups in Ghana are merging their own cultures. Just look at the history of democracy in Ghana and politics. Like, it's very young. It's very young as a nation, as an independent nation. So when you look at it like that, I think Ghana's doing very well. I think other African countries that are doing very well. That doesn't mean that it can't improve, but people have challenges because I'm going to put the ownership on people. Do your homework, do your research, buy this book, buy other books, and learn about the culture, learn about the way the country works, how things work. But you can't show up and expect it to be like America, and when it's not, complain. Now, that doesn't mean that, again, things can't improve. That doesn't mean that there are people who will get you, right? That doesn't mean that you sign a business deal and somebody takes your money and run. Yeah. That doesn't mean that you purchase a piece of land that hasn't been sold to 7 other people. But you got to know that that happens here, right? You know what I'm saying? As they say in Ghana, you have to be sharp, right? to get it. But, you know, there's some things that could change on both sides. I'm just really careful not to indict the whole country, right? Because when you do that, it's like, it's not everybody, but it happens the same way in America, right? Yeah. If you walking down the street and you get robbed, it might be a black person. I don't mean all black people bad.
I don't know whether you're sounding like a politician or a diplomat, something like that, diplomatic on this issue.
No,
but you know, I'm sure people will be saying, "Hey, guys, say the problems that we have. Probably there could be some solutions."
There are. So, for example, customer service, right? But customer service comes with the idea that there are international standards, right? Customer service happens at the top and then comes down. People have to want to be educated on customer service, okay? That's the biggest thing in Ghana that people talk about is customer service. One of the reasons, again, why we put this book out is so that there is a guide, so that people can understand, people can have an understanding of how to function in Ghana, how to move around in Ghana. What are some of the things that you need to know? Don't get me started talking about driving, right?
Yeah.
There are some other things that I don't necessarily have all of the data and the information when you start talking about Doomso and you start talking about the power going out. Or, you know, Ghana has its own movement right now of young people who are saying that they want the government to fix the country,
yeah.
Right? So there's a lot of things that can improve. But again, when you are the type of person who's focused on solutions, you acknowledge the challenges and then you work on providing the solutions that you can. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't point them out, but I'm just not that guy. Like, I'm just not that guy that's going to sit here and point out all of the things that's wrong so people can be happy that somebody said it, because trust me, I live here. I know what it is, right? But again, if I had to point out one thing, customer service, right? We could start with the Better Business Bureau of Ghana.
Well, I think you're making a very great point, because a lot of concerns have been shared, and as you said, the people have to find solutions. It's better to bring a solution than to discuss the problem, because it's not going to stop until there's a solution.
Exactly.
Yes. And now with Ghanaian passports, Rita Mali got a passport. There was a whole lot of, publicity around it. Are people getting passports, those who intend to stay in Ghana?
So one of the misnomers of the year of return was that Ghana was that you automatically got citizenship.
Yeah.
Or that you were going to be able to receive a Ghanaian passport when you came for the year of return. Wrong, wrong, wrong. No country can do that, right? Every country has a Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You got a constitution. I mean, it takes a minute. Now, the president has the ability to gift at will citizenship at any time through executive order, which is how the two groups of diaspora and Africans got their passports in Ghana. Once with the previous president in 2016, and with the incumbent president, His Excellency Nana Addo, in 2019. I think it was important for him to do that in 2019, which gave the year of return some meaning and feeling beyond the Akwaba. Yeah. You are welcome, right? I didn't get my passport as a part of that process. I think I could have if I would have pushed and just kind of bumped. At the time it just wasn't, there are a lot of people who've been here in line longer than I have. So I just made a personal decision at that time that I wasn't going to, that if I did that, I could potentially bump somebody else out. So I didn't do it. And, but I believe personally that, I will look in the camera when I say this, that if the country of Ghana feels that I'm valuable for the country and I bring something, everybody has my number. They have my number at the Flagstaff House. Somebody will call me and say, Diallo, come pick up your passport.
So are people in line waiting to get a passport? Or what's the issue?
Well, it's not a process. So, people need to understand what the law says. They need to understand what the right of abode says. They need to understand what it takes to become a citizen of Ghana and any other country. You have to maintain legal residency for a certain number of years. Okay. I believe it's 5 years in Ghana, which means every year you got to renew your residency permit. Then after you renew your residency permit, you can apply for a passport of citizenship. That's just the way it is right now. Now, I do know that the country is working on something called the Homeland Return Act, where they are trying to figure out the best way to provide streamlined citizenship to members of the African diaspora who want citizenship, right? So the fact is that right now, Ghana, which is important for people to know, is that Ghana does not offer a streamlined way or path to citizenship, specifically for people of the African diaspora, because you're a descendant of Africa or a descendant of the transatlantic slave trade. And for many people, that's what the year of return meant to them. Yeah. Nobody ever said that, right? But it's easy news headlines. You know how the media works. Somebody's going to publish something because you want readers to come. But when you do your research, that's just not the facts, and that's not how it exists right now. Personally, I think that if African leaders were visionaries more than they are, and if they were bold enough, that the African Union, and this is a part of my personal mission in life, that the African Union, specifically in ECOWAS, starting with ECOWAS, and every other country would figure out a way to create a streamlined pathway to citizenship for people of the African diaspora, and really put some energy and effort towards looking at the African diaspora, specifically the African American population that has a $1.3 trillion annual trillion-dollar spending, and look at them as aid, right? Look at them as foreign aid. Look at us as a way to develop the country, and put some things in place, man. You know what I'm saying? Provide some opportunities. So, somebody making $150,000 a year in the U.S. could come here and live and do very well, investing in some small businesses, right? Investing in some larger businesses. You got tons of people. You have historically black colleges and universities. There's so many resources that could be available to African countries, right? By creating that pathway to citizenship, because nobody's gonna come and just be here if they can't be a citizen and if they can't get the benefits of citizenship. You know what I'm saying? So, there's a lot that can happen. That's why I'm here, to help make it happen.
Exactly. And that's why we have the book. And we have other
Yes,
tools
sir.
that you're putting together. So what are some of the tools besides the book that you're putting together to help people who repatriate here or who have plans of getting citizenship or living in Ghana?
Well, I think the first start is educating people, right? And sometimes you got to spoon feed people, or as they say, every parent knows when your child is sick. Sometimes you can't just give them the medicine. You got to put the medicine in the applesauce. So part of what we're doing is slowly but surely. First thing we had to do was help people see that Africa is accessible, right? We had to shorten the distance. We had to move Africa from your bucket list to your to-do list, right? Because most people, if I happen to go to Africa one day in my life before I die, I'll go. That's your bucket list. As opposed to, I'm planning to go to Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, or South Africa next year, and I'm budgeting for it. So we've done that. It's on people's to-do list. Now what we have to do is educate people who are interested in moving, living, doing business, how that works. What do you do? And a part of the way that we do that is training, learnings, being able to collaborate and present viable, vetted opportunities for people who are interested in doing that. And I have a few projects that I'm working on in Ghana personally that I think will help people see that, some in agriculture, some in real estate, and some in, again, training and entrepreneurship.
And this for Ghanaians?
It can be for Ghanaians or anybody, honestly. It can be for Ghanaians and anybody. But one of the things that we are looking at doing is in bringing business owners and entrepreneurs to Ghana, we want to pre-match, pre-set up, and pair them with Ghanaian entrepreneurs, right?
Okay.
And we want to make sure that Ghanaian entrepreneurs and people who are prepared and ready can have some of those same opportunities to figure out how to collaborate. But don't get it twisted. Nobody should get it twisted. You got to go where the money is and bring the money, right? Because we could train a whole bunch of people in Ghana about what to do, how to do, but then what happens after you've gotten that training and then for the next 6 to 9 months? Look at all of the young people here who go through national service. What happens after they do a year of national service? Are there jobs available? Are there opportunities available for them to actually use what they learn? So then what happens? It sits, it rots, it gets stale. Yeah. Look at me and you. If you don't do this every day, if you and your team don't do this every day, work on the media, look at different ways to innovate what you do, how you do, what happens? Ghana Web won't be number one. Why are you number one? Because every day you're working on it, right?
Yeah.
That's the same for everybody else. So we got to kind of look at it that way. Like, it really requires that work and it requires opportunity. So we're helping to bring some opportunity.
Exactly. We're helping to bring some opportunities. And we'll be back and talk about beyond the return. And we want to see what the Adinkra Group and Diallo, what you're doing with beyond the return as well. We'll be back. This is a Lowdown. Welcome back to the Lowdown. My name is Ismail Akwei. We are speaking with Diallo Sumbry on a number of issues, including the Diaspora return, the Adinkra Group, your book, and everything else around the African and African-American connection. So beyond the return, the president says there is that after the year of return. And I don't even want to talk about what the president says or what the government has planned. I want to talk about what you have planned. So beyond the return, how are you taking advantage of that to meet your goals and achieve all your objectives?
Well, first of all, I think, let me just say that I'm really proud of you and Ghana Web for you all doing this interview, finding it important enough to talk about that, right? To talk about the transatlantic slave trade, to talk about this day and how it's connected, because everything is connected, and most things don't happen in a vacuum, including this. Most people know that Beyond the Return was launched immediately after the year of return. Because of its resounding success, it made sense for the government of Ghana to put something in place. So the Beyond the Return is a program, a 10-year initiative with 7 pillars. Forgive me, I don't know the names of all 7 pillars off the top right now. But Experience Ghana, Invest in Ghana, and other items and themes that make sense for the diaspora in Ghana. Recently, I think you've also seen with the president, they reorganized the Beyond the Return Committee, and and they have a new steering committee. I'm not on that steering committee personally, but again, I have a healthy relationship, I believe, with the Ghanaian government, Ghana Tourism Authority, Diaspora Affairs. So personally, one of the things that we are doing is we are looking at how now to create community in Ghana, right? So you had a lot of people traveling in and out. You have some people coming once, twice, 3 times and going in and out. You have some people moving. So now you have this large community that's here in Ghana. Some people are here. You got people in Cape Coast. You got people in Kumasi. You got people in Ada, right? You got people in La Paz. You got people in in Jolu. You got people in Prom Prom. Yeah. So you have all of these different aspects of community here. But now the question is, how do we really create community, right? How do we create a sustaining community in Ghana that serves as a foundation and the entry point for individuals who are coming, for people who are coming and wanting to stay, for people who are coming and wanting to find out more information about how things really happen on the ground. There are a number of groups and organizations that are doing that. So a part of our focus is, what does it look like and how do we serve as leaders in creating this community? We have a number of projects that we are also working on. Most people, if they follow me or if when you read in the book as well, I was installed in a small town called Yame Bechere in the eastern region in Akwa Pim.
Yourself?
Myself.
Okay.
As in Nkosi Ohene. And that was simply because people saw me doing a lot already. So right now we have a partnership with the Cocoa Board in the Nankase Cocoa District. We've been able to help 75 to 100 farmers get employed. They are employed working on their farm. We are rehabilitating right now about 600 acres of cocoa with the capacity of 3,000 acres, and we're bringing investors in for that. So that is changing a community, right? So how do we build community? How do we help the communities that we work with in Ghana develop and build itself from the inside out? And then how do we bring a community of people together? And when I say the diaspora, I'm not just talking about America, Caribbean, US, London. You know, that's the beautiful thing about Ghana. I tell all my friends that, I'm like, I could be at a table, it's 2 people from London, 1 person from Spain, 1 person from Dubai, 1 person from Turkey, all black people to an extent or whatever, or not, but all of these different experiences. You don't get that on the average at a Chick-fil-A in Houston. You're just not going to have, why? Because you know everybody's here for a purpose, right? Everybody's here for a reason, whether they're on holiday, whether they're in a meeting, whether they're mother or dad, whether they moved there. So you really get a universal perspective on everything. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about Ghana. So how do we take that and turn it into a community that you actually do a feature on? Say, hey, let's come look at this Adinkra community, for example, and see what's happening. Look at all the beautiful things that all of these people that's a part of this community is doing, and how it's serving Ghana and how it's serving individuals who want to come in.
So if you say community, you mean bringing people together and all their strength and everything to build the entire plan for the beyond the return, have people invest in the country?
Well, so let's be clear and let's separate the idea of the Beyond the Return program, right, under the auspices of the Ministry of Tourism and the Office of the President. Let's separate that from those individuals and groups who collectively understand what Beyond the Return is for themselves, right? There's 2 separate things. So I could say I'm working on Beyond the Return, but it not necessarily be directly associated with what they're doing. So let's just look at Beyond the Return as a concept. There are people who've been working on this idea of the year of return and black repatriation or relocation or however you want to look at it for years, 30 years. There are people who moved here. The African American Association of Ghana was started 30 years ago. People, you know what I'm saying? So it's been happening for a long time. The question is, you know, what can you do different? How can you innovate? How can you help to expand the impact of it?
So what have you started with currently? And the issue about the Nkosi Ohene title you have and all the bringing of investors and all that, that's a great topic. We'll talk about that also soon, because I'm very interested in that, and I know that our audience are also interested in that aspect of it.
I'll promise you something. I'll do that interview with you but you have to come to my village. If you come to my village and we do it there,
Invitation
I got you.
accepted.
Perfect.
Invitation accepted. We'll come there and then we'll see the things that you're doing with the farmers and
you get to
all
meet the
people
community
there.
and everything.
Yeah.
Because to sit here and talk about it is one thing, but to show your audience and listeners on the ground and to talk to the people in your local language and ask them, then it's not me saying it. The proof is in the pudding.
And that's also part of building a community.
Exactly.
So it's the same as building a diaspora community in Ghana.
Exactly.
Okay.
So many different parts of it.
So how many people would you say we have in the country that make up the diaspora community that's living here now?
You know, gathering data is a problem here. Or finding out a reliable source for data. So I would love to be able to go to a single source and find that out. Now I know what's required to do that. Is it happening? I don't know. I can't say. That's not my job. And you can't try to do everything. You can't be focused on everything. But one of the things that I do know is 3 years ago, Ghana had the most African Americans or Africans of the diaspora living in country than any other African country, right? And I believe that's the same. Even though you don't see it in droves, right? There are a lot of people moving here. There's still a lot of people coming here. It's a little bit different than the year of return because you don't see all of the airport parades and welcome-ins and drummers and dancers in large groups. You know, like in the year of return, 2 or 3 times during the year, we brought groups of over 75 to 100 at once. Now, when you see that, wow, you see a lot of people. But you don't see those groups of 3, 5, 7, 12 that's coming all of the time. You don't see those 2 or 3 people that come here quietly, move, buy a house, buy some land, start a business, and just stick to themselves. So a part of creating that community that we talked about is being able to create a safe space where people feel comfortable providing some data and telling you a little bit about themselves so that at some point we can go to the Flagstaff House and present our own annual census of diasporans in Ghana, right? That's ideally what we want. Ideally what we need to do and what our responsibility is to be able to show who we are, how we got here, what our impact is, and ultimately what percentage of the GDP are we contributing to in the country.
So far, the Adinkra Group, do you have any data yourself? Are you collecting data or you're not?
We're collecting data based on the people who we've brought here.
Yeah. And do you have any idea how much?
I couldn't tell you right now. I know 2019 we brought about 1,000 people here. Okay. Now in terms of what percentage of those people have returned, what percentage of those people have invested, started businesses and things like that, I couldn't tell you that right now. But the more I come back and the more we talk and the more we increase our relationship, we'll be able to share more of that information and leverage and use your platform for people to understand what it is that we're doing so that they can feel comfortable to send that information into us.
Exactly. So now let's move to the book, A Smart Ghana Repatriation Guide.
Yes, sir.
Written by you. Can I pick this one?
Sure.
Okay. So you can see, there's a beautiful picture of you there in a camouflage. And tell us something about the book.
Okay, well, A Smart Ghana Repatriation Guide is exactly what it says. It's a smart guide because we use dynamic QR codes interspersed throughout the book. There are about 106 QR codes interspersed throughout the book in every chapter where if you read the book with your phone, you're able to scan these QR codes and connect you to content aligned with the particular paragraph or chapter that you're reading. There are 20 chapters in the book. One of the things that I'm most proud about this book is while I'm the primary author, I have 8 guest contributors. So what I did is I went to people that I know in real life, people that I rock with in real life, people who I have their phone number, have conversations with, who may not necessarily be the biggest name or the biggest YouTube star, but who I know are on the ground active, and I asked them to contribute their thoughts and opinions to a specific chapter, right? Why? Because it's very important that in my position, I'm able to elevate other people's voices, right? So when you start talking about building a community, this book in and of itself is an example of what building a community looks like, right? I've given other people an opportunity to express how they feel about repatriation, how they feel about living in Ghana, and share it with the world. And then I'm connecting readers to them directly, right? So it's not like you ain't all got to come to me, number one, because I can't deal with all y'all. right? Because our people are special people.
And you know, a larger part of those who contributed to the book, as you said, they are also Ghanaians. A larger part of them.
Some of them are Ghanaians, yes.
Yeah.
Ghanaians who either were born and raised in Ghana, many of them schooled outside of Ghana and came back. And then there are also a few from London and people who, we also have Mr. Kwesi Agyemang, CEO of Ghana Tourism Authority. He wrote the foreword. Mr. Kwesi Awuo-Ababio, Director of Diaspora Affairs in the Office of the President. He wrote the preface for the book, so I'm grateful for their contributions, which help people to see it's real, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, you know. And when people read this book, you can see that, you know, sometimes I have to tell people I do not work for the Ghanaian government. I'm not employed by the Ghanaian government. I wasn't employed in 2019. I'm a fully independent whole person.
And I think you had a lot of backlash for that because people thought you were working for Ghana as a tourism ambassador.
Right, but as a tourism ambassador, right, it's still a partnership.
Yeah.
It's still a partnership with the country. You gave me a title for something that I was already doing, right? You didn't bring me here and invite me here to do this. It just made sense for me to be that because I already proved that I was doing the work for that. So I think that this book, again, is an example of community. And we've been having great reviews. Like, a lot of people have been asking for the book more. Currently, it's only available directly through my website, but we're about to put it on Amazon and et cetera. We really wanted to put it in a small number of people's hands first and get some feedback, get some comments. People are really appreciative of the book. They say it's generous. They say it's real. It's a little funny. I have a small sense of humor.
You know, page 169, it says managing traffic, business and investment. That's quite important.
In the title, right?
Yeah.
So even in that, so the name of the title of the chapters gives it. So for me, doing business and investment in Ghana is like driving in Ghana. Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I like driving in Ghana. It keeps me sharp.
What about honorable and you, the government?
Right, because everybody here is an honorable. So what does that mean? Young people always talk about how they deal with their elders in the government and in their homes. And sometimes, because of the cultural difference, you can't always express yourself fully or have a difference of opinion because it's seen as disrespectful. You know that. People here know that. But, you know, when you get here and you understand honorable, then you have to learn how to maneuver inside of the social and the political space. So, you know, a lot of this is some of my personal experiences and things that I've seen to be true. It's our first piece of work. It's my first book. You know, we're proud of it, but there's more coming.
Of course. And then finally, all black people look alike. And I don't think that's the case in Ghana because whenever we see somebody who is not from here, you know.
What's the rest of that title?
Okay, so the rest of it says ethnicity and language.
So, all black people look alike, ethnicity and language. So some of that is humor.
Yeah.
So it's humor and some of it is serious. For example, a lot of the violence that's happening in the United States and a lot of the police brutality that's happening in the United States is because of mistaken identity. There was a robbery, black man, 6 foot, with blue jeans on and a white t-shirt. How many black men, in a baseball cap on backwards, how many black men do you think that is on an average day on a DC street? Thousands, right? So when you think about it, I'm saying all black people look alike, but do we really, right? And then when we talk about ethnicity and language, the point of it is, are we all one people? What is the differences between our cultures? Better yet, what is the similarities, right? Most people who come to Ghana are not going to do that in-depth research to find out the migrations that happen, the relationship between the Ga and the Ashanti, the relationship where the Volta region is, right? Togo, right? The Fanti. Most people are not going to go up north. Most people are not going to look at the fact that Ghana on the north borders Burkina Faso, right? And then what is the relationship across those two borders when it comes to weaving and the history of weaving? There's a lot because it's a rich, in-depth history. So that particular chapter is about ethnicity and language. And I have a guest author who has his opinion, right? Yeah. The other beautiful thing is I don't agree with everything that all of my guest contributors say in their chapters. So you'll see some disagreements, but that's life. It's a varied experience, and it's important for us to be able to disagree, but still work together. Yeah. Have different opinions, but still work together. So much you know, there's a proverb that says if everybody's thinking alike, nobody's thinking, right? So, yeah, I could talk about this all day though because I wrote it in real life.
So how do we get one of these books to buy?
So easily enough, you could go to my website, theadinkragroup.com. Theadinkragroup.com will take you directly, and it could be ordered. Even in Ghana, you could order it. Okay. I do have some books in Ghana. Probably in the next week or two. As a matter of fact, I'll share it so that Ghana Web can put it out, where there'll be a list of locations where you can buy the book in Ghana. And I'm hoping to have a Ghanaian printer, because right now it was printed by Black Classic Press, which is a black-owned company out of Baltimore, Maryland. But we will also print them in Ghana and make them available.
Okay. So any final words before we end the show today?
I'm sorry. I'm laughing because my mind, sometimes some of the things that come into my mind I can't say out loud. So that's what just happened. That's between me and God.
Well, we hope it's a good thing.
No, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. But that's between me and God. Well, I mean, thank you so much. You know, I would say that I would give people some advice, right?
Yeah.
This is for Ghanaians, and this is for diasporans coming into the country. One of the most important things that I found in Ghana is relationships. I believe that relationships are probably the most valuable currency you can have here. You and I met some years ago. We don't talk often, right? We don't go out to dinner, right? We don't play billiards together. I'm just in real life, right? We're not, but you knew you could call me.
Yeah.
And say, I want to talk about this, and you knew that I would respond, whether I would say yes or no, but I would respond immediately. So, you know, don't put the transaction before the relationship. Take your time and get to know people. And then the other thing that I would say is for people to really understand that friendship is essential to the soul. Friendship truly is essential to the soul. Outside of my colleague, I consider you a friend. I consider you a person to have Ghana's best interests at heart, through your medium, through your work, you know, and I would tell everybody to keep your faith. I know that the coronavirus and the pandemic has dashed some hopes, and I know that people see what's happening in the world, and do I take the vaccine? Don't I take the vaccine? Is the tourism industry going to pick up? You know, what percentage of the GDP is Ghana's debt? All of these things are on people's mind, right? How do I get my kids? How do I get out of this situation? You know, keep the faith and engage your core. You keep pushing, keep working. You can't give up, right? You'll never know if you stop. So you got to keep pushing. Keep pushing.
That's what Diallo Sumbry is saying. And this is the Lowdown. Diallo, thank you very much for coming. And thank you for giving us this informative episode of this program. And I'm sure we're going to talk again. And we're going to visit Nyame Betre to see what you're doing there. The people in the community.
Everybody's invited to Nyame Betre. I promise you, we have the best contumere in all of Ghana. Okay, you understand?
Thank you very much, Nkoso Hene of Nyame Betre.
Yo, thank you.
So we'll have this discussion again another time. This is the Lowdown. Watch us every Monday on Ghana Web TV and all of Ghana Web's digital channels. My name is Ismail Akwei. Be safe.